In the Second World War, the stereotype of a general was a man in a clean uniform, standing over a map in a quiet headquarters miles from the battle. But the American way of war produced a different breed of leader. They were generals who believed that a battle could not be commanded from a map. They were generals who led from the front. They shared the dangers of their men, inspired them with their personal presence, and often terrified their own superiors with their seeming disregard for their own safety. Today, we're counting down the top 5 American generals who truly led from the front. For this list, our ranking is based on 3 key factors. First, proximity to combat. How consistently was this general at or near the front lines? Second, the personal risks taken. Did their actions place them in direct mortal danger? And third, the inspirational impact their presence had on the morale and fighting spirit of their men. Before we begin, 2 honorable mentions who led in their own distinct ways. General Douglas MacArthur. While he cultivated an image of a frontline commander, famously wading ashore in the Philippines, his leadership style was more about grand, symbolic gestures than consistent presence in the thick of the fighting. His presence was a powerful symbol, but he was not the ground-level leader of the men on this list. And General Omar Bradley, the beloved G.I.s general. Bradley was deeply respected for his calm demeanor and his genuine concern for his men, and he made frequent visits to the front. However, his primary role as an Army Group commander, directing over 1 million men, was as a master organizer and strategist. It was a crucial role, but by necessity, it kept him at a headquarters where he could manage the immense scale of the battle. A different role from the hands-on commanders we are highlighting today. Kicking off our list at number 5 is the hard-fighting, hard-drinking commander of America's most famous infantry division, Major General Terry Allen. As the commander of the legendary 1st Infantry Division, the Big One, in North Africa and Sicily, Allen was famous for his aggressive, almost reckless leadership style that perfectly matched his division's motto: no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great. Duty first. Allen believed in leading by example. As documented by historian Rick Atkinson, his command post was often so close to the front that it came under direct artillery and mortar fire. He and his second-in-command, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt, Jr., more on him later, fostered a culture of extreme aggression and swagger. His men, so loyal they were nicknamed Terry's Pirates, followed his lead so much they often liberated supplies from other divisions. While this produced incredible results on the battlefield, it also produced high casualties and made his superiors, like General Bradley, nervous. This brawling, frontline style would ultimately lead to him being relieved of command after the Sicily campaign. However, in a testament to his undeniable effectiveness, he was the only American general in the war to be relieved and then given command of a 2nd Infantry Division, the 104th Timberwolves, which he led with distinction later in the war. The Army knew they still needed his brand of savage leadership. At number 4 is a general who combined frontline leadership with incredible professional competence, Major General Manton S. Eddy. Eddy commanded the 9th Infantry Division, one of the most effective and versatile divisions in the U.S. Army, from the landings in North Africa all the way to the Battle of the Bulge. He was not a showman, but a quiet professional who earned the absolute trust of his men by being there with them. His signature achievement was the capture of the critical port of Cherbourg in June 1944. During this fight, Eddy was a constant presence at the front, personally conducting reconnaissance from his jeep and coordinating the attacks of his regiments from forward observation posts. During the brutal final assault on the city's defenses, the 9th Division had to clear the heavily fortified tunnels of the Fort du Roule. Eddy was reportedly seen standing at the tunnel entrances, observing the battle as his men cleared the German defenders with flamethrowers and explosives. German prisoners captured during the battle were reportedly shocked to learn that the American general commanding the attack was often just a few hundred yards from their own positions. Eddy was the consummate professional who knew the only place to truly command a battle was from the front. At number 3 is the man who believed a commander of airborne troops had to earn his men's respect by sharing their single greatest danger. General Matthew Ridgeway. As the commander of the legendary 82nd Airborne Division, Ridgeway was a fanatic for physical fitness and combat readiness. His troops' loyalty was cemented by the fact that he carried the same gear they did. Instead of a general's customary pistol, Ridgeway often carried a Grunt's rifle, like a Springfield M1903 or an M1 carbine, a clear sign that he considered himself a frontline soldier first. He famously jumped with his men into combat during the invasion of Sicily in 1943. And again, on June 6, 1944, at the age of 49, General Ridgeway parachuted into Normandy with the lead elements of his division. For the next 33 days, he led from the front, fighting alongside his men to secure their objectives. This philosophy continued into the Korean War, where he famously replaced General MacArthur and turned the tide of the war, often visiting the front lines in his signature Jeep, with a grenade still strapped to his chest. He believed that an airborne commander could not, and should not, ask his men to do something he was unwilling to do himself. Coming in at number 2 is the oldest general to hit the beaches on D-Day, and the only one to land with the first wave, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt, Jr. The son of the famous President Roosevelt, Jr., was 56 years old, walked with a cane due to arthritis, and had a heart condition. He was the assistant commander of the 4th Infantry Division, and his repeated requests to land with the first troops on Utah Beach were initially denied. As he wrote in his formal written request, "The force and skill with which the first wave lands will be a determining factor." He argued that his presence would steady the men. He was right. On D-Day morning, he was the first man off his boat. After discovering his division had been landed a full mile off course, his calm, decisive leadership on the beach prevented chaos. He famously made the decision, "We'll start the war from right here." For the next several hours, he walked the beach under fire, completely disregarding his own safety, personally greeting each new wave of troops. His valor was so profound and so obvious to every man on that beach that he was recommended for the Medal of Honor. Tragically, just 5 weeks later, after having been given command of his own division, Theodore Roosevelt, Jr. died of a heart attack. He never knew he had been awarded his nation's highest honor. The medal was awarded to him posthumously. And at number 1, the man whose entire philosophy of war was built around personal, frontline leadership, General George S. Patton, Jr. More than any other high-ranking American general, Patton believed that a battle could only be understood and won from the front. His signature vehicle was his command Jeep, outfitted with loud air horns and massive 3-star plates, which he would drive right up to the sound of the guns. As recounted by countless G.I.s, the sight of Patton's Jeep suddenly appearing at a stalled crossroads was a common and electrifying experience. This obsession with the front line also revealed the darker, more controversial side of his leadership. The infamous slapping incidents in Sicily, where he struck 2 soldiers suffering from what we now call PTSD, occurred because Patton was personally visiting evacuation hospitals that were situated very close to the front. He had just come from seeing the horrific physical wounds of battle and had no patience for what he considered to be cowardice. It was a brutal and inexcusable act, But it was a direct result of his obsession with being at the heart of the action. This same obsession is what made him brilliant. From his race across France to his legendary relief of Bastogne, Patton used these frontline visits to get a real-time, visceral feel for the battle that no map could ever provide. His convoys were strafed by German aircraft, and he was often within range of enemy artillery. But he believed the risk was essential. For making frontline leadership the very cornerstone of his legendary success, George S. Patton is the undisputed #1 American general who led from the front. Allen's grit, Eddy's professionalism, Ridgeway's airborne audacity, Roosevelt's calming courage, and Patton's savage genius. These 5 men, and many others like them, subscribed to a simple and powerful belief: that a true leader leads by example. They shared the dangers of their soldiers, and in doing so, they earned their undying loyalty and inspired them to achieve impossible victories. But what do you think? Did we get the order right? Is there another frontline general you think deserved a spot on this list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the art of leadership, be sure to subscribe to Microdocs and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching.